You got it. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Clayton Kolb. I'm sure you know that. So I am here to talk to you about the Clifton Strengths Finder. And just a show of hands, how many of you have taken the assessment before and know your top five? Okay, so most of you, that's great. So for some, this will be brand new information, which is helpful because you'll learn a little bit about what this assessment does and kind of the inner workings. Even if you've been part of strengths and you've had your strengths for many, many years, I have found that this information I'm going to share is very fundamental in re-understanding like what the different languages and how to apply those. And just for clarity, I am a certified Gallup Strengths Coach. So I do this work here and there. I'm able to meet with folks on an individual level and do strengths coaching. So to talk about your themes and what that looks like in your life. And it's kind of like life coaching in a way, but kind of using the same terminology. So if anyone's ever interested in learning more, having some of those opportunities, we'd love to have those conversations with you free of charge, of course, because I can moonlight and make money off of this, but who has time for that? Um, so before we get started with my sharing my screen, I'm going to throw a link in the chat that is to a Google folder that has some resources for you to use today during our conversation. There is one document called the quick reference card, and that has all of the signature themes and like a brief definition of those. There is a domain cheat sheet, which you'll learn more about as we get into what the domains are. And then there's a file in here called the name, claim, aim. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means and how we use that. So, but those are the resources in addition to the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. We're good. Everyone can see everything. I feel like I'm pro Zoom sharing everything, so I shouldn't have any problems.
You're good, Clayton.
Thanks. It'd be helpful if I was on the right slide. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. So at any point in time, if you do have any questions, since it's a small group, feel free to just, unmute and shout out because I likely won't. I'll see the chat, but that way we can have conversation. But my goal with you today is to kind of uncover some basic language around strengths so that we are on the same page. So when you have these conversations and think about how you might use them with your team or with student organizations you may lead or other teams or just your own general like growth and development as a human being, that you're understanding how this all works. I put mine up there. I'm strategic activator, achiever, individualization, and maximizer. So a lot of fun words, and we'll uncover what those mean. To kind of go back a few bits, just to kind of talk about how Strengths Quest was created, or Clifton Strengths. It's adapted. It's been Strengths Finders. It's everything in between. So it's really now known as Clifton Strengths. How many of you are, by show of hands, are familiar with the Gallup organization? Okay, so Gallup does a lot of polls. So you may think of it, you might hear it like in the news or something. We're like, well, we did a Gallup poll, or the latest Gallup poll shows this. So they're pollsters and they do a lot of data information. And Don Clifton, who is the originator of the strengths-based process here, was a faculty at Nebraska and then became CEO of this organization. What he did is he took 250,000 interviews of high achieving individuals, and how they determined that, I don't quite remember, but I know there was a process. And during those interviews, he determined and figured out how they spend most of their times in areas of strength. They've learned to delegate or partner with someone to tackle areas that they're not strong in. How they applied their strengths to overcome obstacles, and they invent new ways of capitalizing on their strengths in new situations. So what he did is he took all this information that he was gathering from all these interviews and started to kind of group things together and see what's the commonality between all these different things and all the things people are doing. And so what they noticed is that I think this is basically saying the same thing, and that the high achievers are doing these things, right? So it's a little countercultural, and I'll talk about that next. One thing this is a really bad graphic, so I apologize in advance, but one of the things that I want to ask us here, because it hasn't worked with professionals as much. When I've done this with students, and as I say, well, and feel free to put in the chat, like when you look at this, besides the graphic, if you just look at the content that's on the graphic, what's the first thing that you notice? So either like maybe unmute or put it in the chat.
The bad grades, the worst grade. The
bad grade.
I noticed that English looks like it's in larger font than anything else.
Yeah, that's the bad graphic part. So, so I think, thank you. I think Lexi, what you shared, the bad grade is usually what, like, when I do this with students, that's the first thing they notice too, because our culture tends to focus on what we are the worst at, and we spend less time in areas where we have excelled. And so I think this is part of our culture and who we are. And so I'd like to offer today that the strengths perspective is countercultural. The current paradigm is deficit-based. Leaders spend most of their time working with the weakest performers and zeroing in on mistakes. We focus on students' lower grades rather than on their highest. And weakness fixing prevents failure, strengths building promotes success. So the whole concept here in role reversal of your weaknesses and strengths is like your naturally innate strengths and talents is where you should spend your time focused on, and not your weaknesses, right? If we spend all of our time working on our weaknesses and that's not something that's natural to us, we get discouraged, we're not able to move forward. And instead, we should learn to partner with people that excel in those areas, and where we excel, we can complement each other. And I think that's what's really challenging for a lot of folks in this process and understanding strengths, is it seems like it's a very fluffy kind of language. It is based in positive psychology, so I think that's where it might come from. But I would really implore you to think about this approach and how it can provide you better focus and results at the end of the day. Some more fun facts. When individuals focus on strengths, they're 3 times more likely to live a happy life. They're 6 times more successful. They're almost 9 times more profitable, 12.5 times more productive, and 6 times more engaged in their work or in their process in life, etc. So if you think about that, if you spend all your time and energized on things that you excel in and continue to fine tune that, can you see how that would probably be beneficial for you in the end, versus like every day being like, I just can't figure this out. I'll try it again next week. And then you still can't figure it out and you just continually beat yourself down. So that's kind of the concept. All right, we're gonna do a little activity with some hand raising. So raise your hand if you like to talk to people in elevators, airplanes, grocery stores, wherever you go. Okay. Raise your hand if you have a color-coded or otherwise organized closet. Raise your hand if you write down a list of things to do and stick to it. Raise your hand if you make a list of things to do on weekends. Raise your hand if you need to pick someone to race while driving. It's my competitive. Raise your hand if you ask too many questions. Yeah, okay. Or if someone would say you ask too many. No. Raise your hand if you push the elevator button to remind the elevator that you were there. Yeah. So it's a silly thing, but what's really important is that you've noticed not everyone raised their hands on all of these, right? And we have different areas that some raised, some didn't raise. And these are all kind of like, at the end of the day, if you knew every single talent theme, we could talk about like what each one of these refers to. And these are all byproducts of someone's strength, right? And so how they think of the color-coded or otherwise organized closet, like those are going to be your executing people that are getting things done and figuring out a path or strategic, where they're thinking of a strategic piece. So in strengths, there's lots of language. There's talents, there's strengths themes. And so it gets kind of confusing and cloudy. So what I want to do now is break down some of those concepts, which is really going to help you understand like how you use the resources and the things that I've shared you. And if you take the assessment to further understand that. So first is, what is a talent? So a talent theme is a group of similar talents. So The report, that quick reference guide, your top 5, those are talent themes or signature themes. And those themes are made up of similar talents. So think back when I said that Don Clifton did the interviews with all those folks, the 250,000 folks, and created similar themes. So if you look on the screen here, things like enjoying hard work, a tendency to push hard to complete tasks, having internal motivation, et cetera, those are talents that he pulled from these interviews and then themed them together, coded them together to create the talent theme of achiever, right? So these individual are there any achievers in the room? Anyone that's taken that has achiever? So when you're an achiever and you're reading these, you're probably like, yeah, that sounds like me. Yeah, I resonate with that, right? And so these individual little pieces make up that larger talent theme. Okay, so remember, it's a talent theme, even though sometimes we're like, people are like, this is a strength. So again, a talent is a naturally occurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. They're effortless, they're instinctive, you're able to influence others, you're seeing patterns in data. I think the thing that with this is if you've taken the assessment, it's a timed assessment, right? You have to answer rapidly and go quickly because the process is that these things are innate in you. They are part of your being. It's who you are. It's what's natural to you. And that's what we're trying to get at. And that's why it's a strength or a talent of yours. And so that's why they came up to it. So like when things come naturally to you, it's a talent. When it becomes a strength, it's when you're able to provide consistent, near perfect performance in an activity. So this is where it gets really complicated. So you have your signature themes or your talent themes. When it actually becomes a strength is once you invest in it and you get to that near perfect performance in that activity. So you may have communication in your top 5, but you're not flexing that muscle. You're not investing in that skill. And so it's a talent theme. It's something that's natural to you, but you're not always so great in it. And you're like, I don't know why. Like I know communication is a strong point for me, but I'm not always great at it. So what's the deal? Investment. You need to invest. You need to spend time in investing in that and not in your weaknesses in that so that you can be in that near perfect performance in that ability. Does that make sense? So I think that's what's often lost in this process is people get these top 5 and they go, oh, cool. I'm like a woo, a maximizer, an achiever. Great, cool. And then they're like, I just go and run the world now. It's like, no. You have to continually improve on it. It's like if you're running a marathon, you can't just wake up one day and be like, well, I like to run and I'll just run. No. It's not going to work that way. You have to continually build and push yourself and train to do that. Let's see. It's gonna play. I might come back to this video. How long is that? I didn't share the. Yeah, I'll do this. Okay, I might need to reshare with the sound. Sorry.
We could hear it, Clayton.
You can hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of talks about what I was talking about and will lead into what I'm going to talk about next, but sometimes it's good to hear it from another voice or perspective or with visual graphics. So I always like to mix it in because even if it's repetitive for some people, it might click differently.
Is zillion a real number? No, zillion's not a real number. But it is a word you might be tempted to use if you tried to list all the talents found among humankind. Creating a list of every talent is an impossible task, but if you step back
or stop playing, it's cool.
You'll see that talents often have something in common, a theme that connects them. Some talents, like a natural tendency to share thoughts, to create engaging stories, and to find the perfect word, relate directly to communication. That's what they have in common, their theme. So, to begin thinking and talking about them, we can call them communication talents. The Clifton Strengths Finder measures the presence of talent in 34 general areas or themes. Your Clifton Strengths Finder report includes a ranked listing of the 5 themes that hold your most dominant talents, your signature themes. Similar to your fingerprint, the sequence of your themes is unique to you. The odds that someone has the same 5 signature themes in the same order as you are 1 in 33 million. You heard right, 1 in 33 million. Your report is a beginning, not an end. Take this opportunity to explore your talents, harness their power, and bring them to life every day. Try this. First, name it. To begin making your signature themes your own, grab a highlighter. Carefully consider each theme description in your report. Highlight words and phrases that specifically resonate with you. You'll know you're highlighting the right things when you hear yourself say, "That's me." Next, claim it. Post your signature themes and the words or phrases you have highlighted in a place where you'll see them every day. Share your report with people close to you. Ask for their reaction. Then, aim it. Pick one of your signature themes and think about it for a day. Ask yourself, how can I use this theme today? Where can this theme make a positive difference in my life today? Begin to flex this theme by using the action items provided in your report to hone your talents into strengths. Like muscles, strengths can wither if they're not exercised regularly. What will be your daily practice to stay in tip-top shape? Once you are deliberately using this theme every day, focus on another signature theme. As you start to flex each of your signature themes, you'll find ways to build on your greatest areas of potential. Our talents are an instinctive and intuitive source of wisdom and power. When we begin to intentionally tap into this power, we gain the ability to transform every moment, every interaction, and every day. You have dynamic talents just waiting to be unlocked and developed. Use your Clifton Strengths Finder report to name, claim, and aim your signature themes.
Okay. No. Don't go back. Okay. Lexi, do you have a question? Oh, your hand raised in your thing. So yeah, so that again gives us a little bit of insight. So if you've never taken this, what happens is when you take the assessment, you get your top 5 signature themes, and they give you a report that's very specific to the ordering of those themes, which is a nice thing you can unpack and kind of read through and figure out like, oh, this is how this fits to me. And if you've had this and you've read this, you've probably gone, oh my gosh, this sounds just like me to a T, right? And so I think that's what's really unique about this. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So what are the odds, as it showed in the little video there, that there's a lot of combinations. Only 1 in 278,000 and change share your top 5 themes, and 1 in 33.39 million share top 5 themes in the same exact order. So it's not very likely you'll find somebody with all top 5 the same in different order, but you might find like we all have like 1 or 2 the same, and I'll give you an example of some of those. So top 5 signature themes, 1 in 3 people will have achiever, learner, relator, or strategic. If you have one of those in your top 5, can you raise your hand that you know of? And then 1 in 20 have discipline, self-assurance, significance, and command. So these are less, not popular, but less like often found themes. So it's really, when you see those, it's really interesting to kind of figure out what kind of and how those break down. What would be helpful is if you're able to pull up the quick reference card, which was in the Google documents.
Clayton, I think maybe you froze, if you can still hear us.
He knows.
I don't even know what happened. I was
Technology,
hardwired.
Clayton, technology.
I'm hardwired too. I had to go to the Wi-Fi. Okay, sorry about that. I'll go back to here. What was the last thing you heard me say?
If we can go to the quick reference guide in the Google folder.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I didn't miss that much. Yeah, so the quick reference guide that has like a brief definition of each one. And what I want to talk through now is like the domains. So there's domains, there's themes, there's strengths, there's all these languages, right? I said there's a lot, it's confusing. That's why this is kind of helpful to kind of put it back in perspective. So in the grand, if you zoom out, there's 4 domains of talent themes. There's an executing group, a relationship building group, a strategic thinking group, and an influencing group. And so all of the signature themes align with one of these domains. So like when you look at the quick guide, you can see that some of them are colored, like activator, command, communication, competition have similar color. They all fall under the same domain. And so that's where it is matched up. So what I'd like to do now is kind of give you some background context to these different domains. What happens here, and what's really good about using this with like a team, is that you can create a team map, right? So we could do this with like my psych union student activities. I could do a team map. I could do a team map with the directors of the division. I could do a team map with the professional development committee, right? And create a team map where it shows where are our themes showing up in these domains? Where are the gaps? How do we leverage certain people for certain tasks based on their talents, right? And so I think it's really important to use this as a tool. So the first one is our, come back, executing. So leaders with a dominant strength in the executing domain know how to make things happen. As it sounds, you're executing things, not like executing, like you're completing a task. When you need someone to implement a solution, these are the folks who will work tirelessly to get it done. Leaders with the strength to execute have the ability to catch an idea and make it a reality. So the folks in here that have executing are achiever, consistency, focus, arranger, deliberative, responsibility, belief, discipline, and restorative. So if you have taken the assessment and you have a executing theme, can you raise your hand? A lot of executors here. Makes sense. A lot of you are on this committee. When you look at this, what's one of the executing themes that stands out to you and that you see yourself like really reflecting in? So if someone that raised their hand.
Consistency is one for me. And when I read about consistency, I say, yep, that definitely makes sense.
Can you read the short definition for everyone?
Let me find it. I had it pulled up. There it is. Consistency. People exceptionally talented in the consistency theme are keenly aware of the need to treat people the same. They try to treat everyone with equality by setting up clear rules and adhering to them.
So how have you seen that maybe play out in either your job or in just personal life?
Well, in personal life, definitely as a parent. I have 3 daughters, so we had to set clear rules about what they could and couldn't do. And I could definitely see that. But also, I was also a teacher prior to that. So there's this whole idea of being a teacher, what's fair. I'm sure you've all seen the sign, being fair is not giving everyone the same thing, but giving everybody what they need. And that's, so I could definitely see myself in that role, and in this department as well. I can see that, we've got a lot of different personalities, but that doesn't mean that everybody gets the same thing. It just means that everybody gets what they need.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you.
Phyllis, we'll be having lunch soon because I got a 17, 16, and 14-year-old daughters, and I need the Cliff Notes. Sorry, Clayton, to hijack your.
No, you're good.
And I did not take this assessment yet, but I can just tell you, I'm sorry, I'm just sharing, even though maybe it's not appropriate because I didn't take the assessment. I can tell you right now, I know when I take this, I'm going to come up as an achiever. Where it says, if you're exceptionally talented in this, you work hard and you possess a great deal of stamina and you take satisfaction in being busy and productive. I am, outside of my Westchester life, 2 of my daughters play volleyball, and I somehow got myself nominated to be the uniform coordinator for the volleyball club. And when I tell you I am busy with all these different pieces that have to be ordered from all these different vendors and keeping up with sizes and who needs what. But we had tryouts for a portion of the club 2 weeks ago, and it was a lot of work just getting the girls in and out. But I just took such immense pleasure when I looked out on the court and saw all the girls with the same t-shirt on that I knew that I ordered. And we had plenty of sizes, and it just gave me like just this great, I just smiled and was just so excited that I was able to like execute that. So I know for a fact Achiever is going to come up as one of my things when I take this.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. I'm also an achiever, and anyone that works closely with me know that like I have a lot of stamina, and I just go, and I just want to check the box and move on. And just I don't know. And people are like, you need a work-life balance. I'm like, I have it. I just like to achieve all the time. Like I just want to keep going. So I think it's very interesting. And a side note is I get a lot of questions about, well, Clayton, like, are we allowed to take this multiple times? Like, some people have taken it 2, 3, 4 times. If I have my Clifton Gallup hat on, I would say, no, you're only supposed to take it once, right? Because the talents that are innate with you are going to rise to the top. The side note is, or the caveat to that is like 2 things. There are sometimes like major life changes that people experience that are really drastic for them that may influence some of their talents, right? And when you take this, you get your top 5. You can pay to get your full 34, right? I have my full 34 because of my role, and I've taken this 2 times, once in college and once a few years, like 5 years ago. And the top 5 shifted slightly, but they're all in my top 10. And so more than likely, like they break the list down to like your dominant, your supporting, and your lesser themes. And so that kind of puts things in perspective. So like, I don't always recommend taking it multiple times because it costs money. So unless you want to, be the sole benefactor of Gallup Clifton Strengths Finder, you can do that. But and it's also like you can choose, like if you have a top 5 and you've done it twice and one kind of fell off, but you feel really passionate about the one, no one's going to say, oh, you can't put that in your top 5. Shame, shame, shame. So I think to your point, Lisa, it's like you already recognize that this is probably going to be in there, which it probably will be. But if it wasn't, it's not like you can't be like, well, I really see that resonates with me. All right, let's go to the next relationship building. So those who lead through relationship building are the essential glue that holds the team together. Without these strengths on the team, in many cases, the group is simply composite of individuals. In contrast, leaders with exceptional relationship building strengths have the unique ability to create groups and organizations that are much greater than the sum of their parts. So our relationship building people are adaptability, developer, connectedness, empathy, harmony, includer, individualization, positivity, relator. If you know your 5 and you have one of these, will you raise your hand? Okay. What was interesting, Phyllis, about you using consistency, individualization is one of my top 5, and that's like the complete opposite of consistency in some ways. So that one is people are intrigued with the unique qualities of each person. They have a gift for figuring out how different people can work together productively. And so what's interesting is like, there's sometimes a rub, and there's like, I have a whole deck of cards that like gives examples of when almost like when strengths collide, because my individualization would lead me in my relationship building to understand how each individual is made up and how they come to the table uniquely in order to move something forward, right? But what can be seen from a consistency standpoint is that I'm not being consistent with how I'm treating people because or you're playing favorites or you're doing that. And I might look at the consistency person and be like, you can't treat everybody the same. But there's a way to marry both of those ideas so that you're being consistent about your approach in helping people be successful, right? And so I think that's what's really unique about these themes, and once you understand more about them. Does someone have maybe a relationship building theme that they would like to share how they have seen it play out in their lives? And if they do, if they could read the definition.
I was just going to share that, well, first of all, my husband's in the MBA program at Penn State Great Valley. So he recently did the Strengths Finder as a part of his program. And his number one is empathy, which I had never even seen on anyone's top 5. And it is hit my man's number one. And so, and it's a positive psychology based program. So they also recently had him send out this survey to like 100 people that he's connected with, and they all had to write their best stories about him. And all of them talked about his empathy. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that this thing is really like real stuff. And like people are who they are, whether they're wherever they're showing up. Like our family was saying that, his colleagues were saying that. But my partner is this to a T. I have some of that individualization stuff in my top 5, but I've never encountered anyone else that had empathy as their number one. So that was surprising to me, but not really having known him. Also, I will say my mom was part of the original class of positive psychology out of Penn. And she had me take this when I was a child at like 6. And it's the same as it was when I was 6. So just in terms of, I just had to share that in terms of like the longevity, and like it really does stay pretty consistent.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And that thing with the empathy piece. Yeah, I think it's interesting to I lost my train of thought. With the relationship building ones and the things like empathy. Oh, that's right. Okay. I was like, I just talk long enough and it'll come back to me. The idea that some of these, they are innate in us, right? And so sometimes when people take it for the first time and they read it and they're like, I feel like seen, right? Or when I've coached people in the past and I've asked certain questions, like I've done this long enough now, I can ask certain questions, and based on your response, I can be like, oh yeah, that's your connectedness coming through, or that's your harmony coming through, or that's your includer, right? And so I think that's really unique in how this process works. It's because it is really who you are. And if you're not living in that strength, if you're not training, it's still there. It just hasn't been harnessed. And I'll talk a little bit about that too, hopefully. Okay, strategic thinking. So leaders with great strategic thinking strengths are the ones who keep us all focused on what could be. They are constantly absorbing and analyzing information and helping the team make better decisions. People with this strength or strength in this domain continually stretch our thinking for the future. So these are our analytical, context, futuristic, ideation, input, intellection, learner, and strategic. Any strategic thinking people? Which ones do you got? Either Lexi or Phyllis.
I have learner.
Learner. So learner is great desire to learn and want to continuously improve the process of learning rather than the outcome excites them. Do you have maybe an example of how you've seen this play out for you?
I find myself going to conference sessions at like a conference of things that I don't even do in my job, but I'm just so interested to learn. I can't help myself but be like, this person's an expert. I want to know more. And probably that gets me in trouble with like my dissertation stuff, because it just keeps going into different realms rather than staying focused, because I just want to learn. I want to be able to know as much as I can.
Yeah.
So it's sort of anti-strategic in a lot of ways, but it informs a larger strategy. Yeah,
I would say I would agree with that. Phyllis, which one did you see?
Yeah, I was a learner as well.
Okay.
And I would say for me, in my role, what I do with employer relations, I mean, I talk to so many people in career development about the different things that they do. And I will always talk to someone about what they do, because I want to be able to bring that back to what we do here. And even if it doesn't have anything to do with my particular role, or it doesn't make sense for Westchester, I still want to learn about what they do, because I just feel like that's the process of getting better, is it's just being able to talk to a lot of different people and just get their ideas to learn more, to use that word. But yeah, so that I would say that's where it comes for me.
Great. Thank you. I always I try to figure out who my learners are, because those are the people I'm also going to be like, hey, do you have a good podcast you can recommend on such and such topic? And more than likely, they're like, absolutely, here's 4. And I'm like, cool, thanks. Like they are always gleaning information. I think learners in definitely my dominant themes. I just don't know where it falls. But yeah, I think what's interesting about the strategic thinking people, these are often our like forecasting and big picture people too, right? They're trying to set the vision. They're trying to say, okay, we need to zoom out at the 50,000, 100,000 foot level and take a look at everything that's happening. Like even the theme of strategic within strategic thinking is all about finding the like patterns and creating alternative ways to proceed and how you do that, right? And strategic is in my top 5, and I see this play out where on a kind of a silly way to see it is I like big crowds, not for socializing, but for like observing. And like for some, I have this weird skill that like I can see the pattern of like people moving. And so if I need to get from point A to point B through a huge crowd, I'm like, just hang on, follow me, and I can just shoot right through because I'm almost like anticipating where people are going to go and what they're going to do. And I think it's a weird way to look at it, but that's how my mind works, where it's just like I see all the things being played out and I can quickly just organize them all and be like, oh, here's a pattern, here's this, here's that. This is how, okay, good. Now we can use it and move forward. And what's really important about all of these, and after we talk about the next one, I'll give some more examples, is that like not everybody will have a theme in all areas, right? Like in all domains. Like you might have all your themes within 2 domains, maybe just 1 domain. And so you have to think about when you're positioning yourself to be successful or your team to be successful, how do you leverage or reach out to folks in these different themes in order to accomplish the task or goal, right? If we were all strategic thinking people and that all of our top 5 of this group here today, all 8 of us were all strategic thinking, we would never get anything done. Because we'd all be like, ooh, let's learn. Ooh, let's talk about the future. Ooh, I want to have input. Ooh, I want to think about that, right? And it would be like, and we would be heads in the sky, heads in the clouds, and say there was a big group of like executors in the wing. They'd be like, those people never get anything done. They just talk and they just brainstorm, right? And so like, that's just an easy example of like how we need to do that and move it forward. Any questions? Sorry, I haven't asked if there's any questions. Any questions on kind of this one? Okay. If you see a theme and you're like, I don't know what that one, like this one doesn't make sense, we can always talk about that too. The last domain is influencing. So those who lead by influencing help their team reach a much broader audience. So people with this strength in this domain are always selling the team's ideas inside and outside the organization. When you need someone to take charge, speak up, and make sure your group is heard, look to someone with the strength to influence. So that's our communication, competition, maximizer, self-assurance, significance, woo, activator, and command. And woo, for those that don't know, is winning others over. That's what woo stands for. So how many folks have an influencing theme? Kelsey, what's one of your influencing themes? Call you out.
I have 3. One of them is competition, which is, if I read it off here, people talented in competition, theme, measure their progress against the performance of others. They strive to win first place and revel in contests. I think a perfect example I was thinking of is the PACER test. If you've ever had to take that, it's like running back and forth in your high school gym, essentially. And they always said like this amount that you should get to be considered like healthy, which like who decides that? And like it's so different for male and female, but whatever. And the females always way lower. But so in gym class in high school, you have to take this, and they always tell you like the minimum you should be getting. So like for girls running back and forth, like the minimum was like 15, maybe 20, like it was pretty low. And I remember all the girls would be like, I'm only going to do 20 and then I'm going to like be done. Like you could decide to be done when you wanted to. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do like what everyone else is doing. Like I'm only going to do 20 or 25. And then inevitably when everybody, like all the men on the other side of the gym are still running when 25 is up, I'm like, oh man, I know I'm going to keep going until they're done. Like I'm not quitting. Like I say I'm going to, but I know I'm not because I just can't let them win. So I think that's a perfect example. Yeah,
that's really great with that one. And competition is one of those where it sometimes has a negative connotation to it because people perceive that competition is a negative thing, right? Like it causes stress or it's not always a competition, right? I get that. It's not always a competition, Clayton. Like, I know, but that's, but I'm still going to win. It's fine. But it is important in helping influence others in weird ways. My competition is in my top 10, and my little fun way of recognizing my competition is when I'm driving and I have my like GPS and it says like your ETA is like 2:30. I'm like, no, that's time to beat. that's not like what I gotta get there before then, right? And so I have like in my mind, like I'm thinking, how do I do that, right? I think the one thing is, do we have any woos? No woo. Oh, a woo. Okay. So I'm going to describe woo. Lexi, you tell me if this is if this resonates with you. So winning others over is, the definition says, they love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. They derive satisfaction from breaking the ice and making a connection with someone. And how I see this play out is, if we were in, say, the ballroom in Sykes and there was about 100 people in there, the woo person, Lexi, would go, ooh, this is really exciting. I don't know many of these people. So I'm going to go and have like quick little conversations with all these people and just try to get to know them, like on a little bit, like, ooh, who are you? What's going on? Oh, this is great, exciting. And then like get really bubbly and be like, okay, got it, I'm done with you. I'm going to go to the next person, right? And go. Does that sound like a little familiar? Yeah. So that's our typical woo, where they're high energy and they're bubbly and they're going in, and their role is to really just like make that initial foundation and connection. And what happens is, in a negative, when people aren't living in like the best part of this woo, is that it seems like they're being fake, or they're being shallow in their interactions, or transient. But like really they're like getting people on their side, they're getting people excited, and that's really helpful. What you need to partner with a woo is someone in the relationship building theme, unless you have both, which is great. Where like I have relator in my top 10. And so like I lean on my woo to initiate the conversation, and I use my relator and my developer then to go in afterwards and have like a meaningful, deep conversation on the side for like an hour, right? So I'm like, let the woo buzz around the space, that's fine. I want to have this like really deep conversation. Not saying woos can't have deep conversations, but that's how it's kind of set up. So it's really interesting how these all play off of one another.
Clayton,
Yeah.
I apologize. We are approaching 9:44. If we could try to get our presentation wrapped up shortly, so we can allow for a couple questions, that would be great.
Yeah, I only have 2 more slides, so we should be good. So the one thing about the name, claim, and aim is that there's a sheet with there. It's basically helping you understand and process all of this. So name it, like the video said, naming it, claiming it, aiming it, making sure that you go through this process. You can do it with each one individually and then collectively as well. So I have that resource for you as well. The last thing I really want to kind of hit on right now, and I've kind of alluded to this before, is there's been different languages. There's balcony and basements, there's shadows and light, but this help and hinder concept. So as I said before, these talents are innate with you. So when you're living in the helping thing, you have positive and productive application that allows for great success. When you're in the hindrance, you have a negative application that holds us back. So blind spots, biases, etc. So say you have a theme and you're really flexing that muscle and you're really building on that, and you can see that you're living in this helping state where it's really positive. If someone is not applying it in a positive way, that it's, you know, really detrimental to themselves or to others, and they're kind of in a toxic way, that's still a theme, but they're in this hindering perspective. So even with the theme, living in the best, how you apply it can really impact those around you, right? My strategic and my activator, I could be really great at that, but I could be hindering myself and others if I'm not including people in the process and I'm just steamrolling through, right? And so thinking about how that all plays in. And then finally, I would just say once you take the assessment, you get access to the portal. There's a lot of great resources on here, different insights, different reports on YouTube, and here there's little videos that you can watch where it talks about, like, if you don't know what responsibility is, it's someone like describing themselves as being in the responsibility theme. So it gets you to understand it better. And it's another great way to do that. So I'm always happy to do this kind of presentation or work with teams or individuals. So if you have any need or desire to do that, feel free to reach out to me. I've done 4 presentations, I think, for Office of Wellness Promotion for their peer educators in this process, but I can do more with teams and team mapping and things like that. So I guess I will leave it off at that to allow any time for any questions or reflections or things of that nature.
Well, first off, Clayton, thank you so much on behalf of everyone present here for this presentation. This has been quite eye-opening, at least for myself, as I'm sure as well as the rest of those that are attending here. Just as a quick reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please feel free to unmute and do so. And you can also use the chat feature if you're more comfortable with that.
And I just shared the QR code because it's a little bit of an assessment moment, but please feel free to ask questions. Clayton, this was great. It was, I think as someone that's seen strengths a lot, you shared a lot of interesting things. Kara, when I was on Kara's team in FSL, we did that mapping assessment, and that was really a cool assignment too, that made it refreshed all of the strength stuff because it made you think about how your team was effective. So I hope people take advantage of the opportunity to work with you as a certified strengths guru, because that's a really cool exercise that helps an effective team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting about the mapping piece is that you really want to make sure if we're going to do this, do our work well, we're thinking collectively about how we apply ourselves. And so if you're working with someone, you're on a team and you get stuck in this position to lead a certain project and it's not in your wheelhouse or it's not in your themes, like, are we setting ourselves up for failure? So how do we take a step back and be like, let's work smarter, not harder, for lack of better words, on achieving our goals or working together, for sure.
Clayton, I am, first of all, on a personal note, I will be reaching out. So just look forward to an email on that. I feel like this is huge. Where are we in terms of the research around the use of this strength finder, if you know, Clayton, because it just seems so counter to the way I would say most industries, most businesses, you know, Westchester included, in terms of how they assess their talent, because it just like I've worked for a number of years, and every time you get an appraisal, it's, you know, there's areas of opportunity, which understandably, I'm not saying there shouldn't be, but listening to this piece of the presentation and probably just getting more steeped in it, like, it's so counter to how I would probably have to say the appraisal process works around the globe. So what does the research say, or where are we with this type of mentality being steeped into institutions, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know specifically all the research. I know that there are businesses, organizations, universities that are strengths-based organizations. So university I've worked with before, they were a strengths-based campus. So that meant every individual on that campus had access to the assessment to take it, all students, staff, and faculty, and it becomes ingrained in a lot of the language. They didn't take it the step further that you're talking about within like the assessment, but I know there are businesses or small businesses and organizations that do that and work with the Clifton organization and Gallup organization to do that. I think it would be really excellent to use, like, if this was a common language, right? We always talk about creating common language. If this was something that this, like an institution like Westchester or the Division of Student Affairs wanted to adapt as a common language and approach, then we have to be intentional throughout the whole process, right? It's not about putting in our email signature and being like, high five strategic people, yeah. It's about like, how does this help shape conversations? How does it help shape setting goals? And to your point, like institutionally, how performance in HR does performance management would have to shift drastically. So in the meantime, is there an opportunity to kind of fold in our own process? Or what would be nice is if like the organization as a whole said, we're going to do this and set it up this way. And I think that's like the ideal or utopian version of like how to introduce this, but on a smaller scale, it definitely is possible. I think, you know, I look at my team and I could probably think about how we can incorporate this into like our process and how we manage and evaluate ourselves and our student staff easily. With student staff, for sure, we could do that because we have a lot more control. So it is out there and people are doing it really well and have been doing it really well for a long time. It's I just think it's challenging to change organizational culture that's been around a long time for people that like the way it's always been done.
Agreed. Any last question as we need to finish wrapping up our presentation at this time?
I just want to thank you for all this information. I'm just fascinated by all this, and I'll probably reach out to you because I'd like to take the assessment if I could somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want to say, like, it's not a question, but I really appreciated the way you were talking about how they connect together and the ways that they influence each other. Because I think that that's, I did this like several years ago at like a previous job, and then we just did it in HEPSA last semester. And so we're like talking about it a lot, and we talk a lot about the individual things or like the overall, I'm going to say the wrong word, but like the themes, like the big things, and then like the team mapping, but not so much like these are the 5 that you have, and here is how they're like interconnected, which I find very interesting. But it's probably because connectedness is my number 1.
I was about to say, you probably have connectedness in your top 5, but there we go. You answered my. Well, thank you all so much. I'm always willing to be a resource and help wherever I can.
Thank you, Clayton, and thanks to everyone who attended our session. Enjoy the rest of your day.